What up, Screen Fiends? I'm GB, and you're tuned in to Headz TV, where we like to discuss all the wonderful things appearing on your movie and your TV screens. In this episode, I'm going to give my review of Better Call Saul, Season 3, Episode 6, titled Off Brand. Okay, my predictions were wrong, as usual. And you know, it really is a credit to Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould and their writing style and the way not only that they write each individual story, meaning Better Call Saul or Breaking Bad, but the way that they're connecting them. Because just when I seem to have Jimmy figured out or Hector or any of the characters that we've seen in Breaking Bad, whenever I have them figured out and I think I know the direction that they're going, Gilligan just throws a curveball and it totally ends up being a whole different direction. So, you know, I've been harping all season on, okay, this is how Saul is going to get into criminal law, and this is how Saul is going to start to go bad, and this, and this. And then they just keep throwing a wrench in my plan there. So, look, not that I don't like what they do. I love the approach that they're taking, so I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, you know, coming from the standpoint of someone who's trying to figure things out as they go along, you keep throwing me for a loop. All right, this episode was really good. I really enjoyed it. And all right, let's just get into it. Okay. Synopsis. Jimmy embarks on a new endeavor. Chuck pushes himself to the limit, and Nacho finds himself ensnared in a power struggle. I believe I actually got two right, because I was right about Chuck and I was right about Nacho and that whole thing. But I was wrong about the Jimmy, and he's the main character, so. All right, so let's start with Jimmy. Jimmy embarks on a new endeavor. I thought his new endeavor was going to be going into criminal law. But apparently he can't practice law for a whole year. So now he's got to find ways to make money other than practicing law. So he tries to sell his already purchased airtime for his commercials to other local businesses, hoping that they will pay him to shoot the commercial, and then he'll throw in the airtime free. It's really just a way of making his money back on his airtime investment is really all it is. And probably to pick up a few extra bucks, and I guess to pay the film crew there, right? So what we get is a failure at that, where he totally fails at selling his airtime or his commercials to other businesses. So what he decides to do is to use a commercial slot to make a commercial for a guy who sells commercials. Yes, that's right, ladies and gentlemen. Saul Goodman comes back into the foray as a character that Jimmy creates so that he doesn't go using his own name and everything in the commercial, sullying his law reputation, which I think obviously is going to happen. Maybe. I don't know. I'm really lost at trying to connect the dots to how he's going to be Saul Goodman the lawyer. I thought I had it figured out, but like I said, I don't know so much anymore. Right, so he makes this great commercial with this silly getup that he kind of looks like a cop or a SWAT guy or something, or like an 80s porn star maybe, with this old getup, and he does a pretty good commercial for Saul Goodman selling his services to make commercials, right? Kim, at the end of it, I don't know what she makes of it. I don't know what to make of her attitude towards the commercial. Part of me thinks she's impressed with Jimmy, and part of me thinks she's embarrassed for Jimmy. And another part of me makes me think, do I really want to be involved with this guy anymore? Like, look at this. This guy's a sideshow. I don't know. But I was hard to read into Kim's acting. Rhea Seehorn is amazing in the role, but her acting specifically in that scene was absolutely fantastic because you really can't read, you can't make heads or tails, but you can read all these things on her face, but you can't make heads or tails of what is actually going through her mind, which is pretty good because, that's real life. That comes across where, we're actively thinking about something or trying to figure something out, and you may not be able to read my face during that process because I'm thinking 10 million different things and I have all these different thoughts running through my head. So really liked what they did with her there, and I also liked the conversation with where he wants her to read over the contracts and everything, and she, I've been reading contracts all day. I can't look at another contract with Mesa Verde and everything. So, I really like that scene too, where they're outside smoking. Those scenes are always good with the two of them when they're outside sharing a cigarette, having the conversation, because you always get this awesome, not only like love connection from them in those scenes, but a real buddy relationship. Like it's two buddies, two friends out there, having a smoke, having a chat. I like that. And that's pretty much all we got with Jimmy for this episode. I mean, it wasn't tons, but it was good stuff. What we got was good stuff. Oh, and I love the scene with Chuck's ex-wife, and Jimmy and Kim. Kim looks like she will side with Jimmy no matter what. She looks like she understands Jimmy's feelings towards Chuck, which is understandable because she worked at HHM too. She knows all of that inside stuff, right? So that makes total sense. That I think if Jimmy was ready to go and help Chuck, she would have been right there by his side. And if he was what he did do and say, I don't want no parts of that, he's not even my brother no more, I feel like she kind of took his side there too, and then the woman who plays the ex-wife, Chuck's ex-wife, you gotta respect her thinking and where she's going and why she's so disgusted at Jimmy, right? Chuck told her all these bad things about Jimmy and she didn't think any of them were true, and she doesn't know really what's going on deep down, so she's kind of lost in the situation as well. She doesn't really have all the information. So, she's looking at it like your brother is losing it. That's why he's treating you like this. You're saying he's crazy. You should be there to help him. And I guess part of that is true, but I don't think Chuck is crazy. Like, he seems to be well put together and all there for the most part, like in the confines of his house and all that without any electronics around. But I really liked that scene. It was very emotional, and I was surprised by Jimmy's attitude. I do think he partly felt bad and partly regretted it once the ex-wife left, but while she was there, he really was hard-nosed and stuck to his guns. And I didn't expect that from Jimmy, because anytime Jimmy crumbles or crushes or falls to pieces, it's over Chuck. So to see him stand up against Chuck was nice. All right, let's move on. Chuck pushes himself to the limit. I was right about this one where he's going to... Well, I was right and wrong, because I said he was going to push himself to the limit to prove whether or not he was crazy. But what he really does is pushes himself to the limit so that he can... I think first it's about seeing if he's still bothered by the battery, knowing what happened in the courtroom earlier. And it still does affect him, and it's... Whoa, sorry about that. It still does affect him, and it still does hurt him. So then he suits up with his space blanket and everything and makes out into the scary world and finds a payphone and calls the doctor that didn't really treat him, but I believe it was season 1? I want to say it was season 1. Maybe it was 2, but I really think it was season 1 where Chuck went into the hospital and the doctor is trying to convince Jimmy and Kim that, this isn't real, it's all in his head, and he needs to seek help for it. And, Jimmy basically, brushed her away, whatever, and said, it's real, okay? The guy really feels pain, blah, blah, blah. So what I think he's doing is trying to find that doctor who is being honest to get some answers, maybe, to kind of push him in the right direction. What can he do to help himself without being committed? Has she ever heard of this situation? Stuff like that, I think. Or maybe he's going to ask her about Jimmy and what Jimmy was telling her and stuff. But I really think it's about his condition. I think at this point, Chuck is very concerned about his condition. And now he's starting to question whether or not he's crazy or not. And that's where I think his story is going for the rest of the season. And then finally, we get Nacho finds himself ensnared in a power struggle. Now, that's what I was right about. It was kind of easy, self-explanatory, right? So I don't want to toot my horn too much about being right about it. But it's basically Nacho doesn't really want to be the gangster. Does he want to make the money? Does he want to be the drug dealer? Yeah, I think so. Seeing from what we've seen earlier. But he's always been the voice of reason. He's always been a guy that seemed to shy away from violence if necessary. And, to be the good guy amongst the bad guys, I guess, right? So, so we find Nacho in this situation where it's basically Don Hector versus Gus. Now, I still believe that Hector is a Don. He's a boss. He's not the boss of all bosses, but he is a boss. And Gus is a boss too, but I don't think Gus has Don status. I just think he's proven to be a good businessman and a good salesman and very smart at his the way he runs his front and the way he brings his product across the border and all that. And instead of Hector looking up to him, Hector resents him. And Hector, I think, thinks that he should have everything that Gus has. Like, Gus has a front. Well, I got to have my own front. And he kind of tries to bully Nacho into letting him use his father's business as a front, which Nacho does not want to do. And we get a great scene of the starts of the stroke that we know Hector's going to have that's going to put him in a wheelchair, dinging the bell. Nacho and the pill and all that. Starting to have a feeling that maybe Nacho is either going to poison him somehow with that pill, or more likely find a way to take the pills away from Hector and then stress Hector out, or get Hector in a stressed position where he starts to stroke out and doesn't have his pills to save the day. That's what I think is more believable. Nacho trying to keep the pills from Hector. And that's what him looking at the pill was. It was him getting that idea. But the way he covers it up and everything also makes me think he's going to try and do something to that capsule to possibly poison Hector, maybe hoping it kills him, and then it doesn't kill him. It just puts him in that chair. Something along those lines. But I used to think it was going to be Mike and Gus that were responsible for the wheelchair and everything that was going on with Hector during Breaking Bad. But now I'm starting to think that it's going to be Nacho that does that to Hector. And that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. Because remember, Nacho is not a character in Breaking Bad, though we do believe he's alive because Jimmy mentions, "Who sent you? Ignacio." And Ignacio is Nacho's real name. So I really think that Nacho is going to end up in jail by the end of this. Why or how, I have no idea, but hopefully we'll find out soon, right? So yeah, we get that great scene with Victor and Gus's other dude, the black dude. I forget his name. He's the guy that is following Walt around, and Walt kind of pulls the okie doke on him a few times. Yeah, I like that guy. He looks really tough and mean, you know. He looks like he put on some weight now as opposed to in Breaking Bad, but we can always chalk up weight problems and weight issues to gaining or losing weight over the course of 6 years. Totally believable. When people look aged, it's a little tougher to buy, but we haven't really ran into that problem too much, so fingers crossed. Okay, so we get that great scene with Victor and Gus's other guy and the 6 bundles. I don't want to get flagged on YouTube, so I'm just going to call them bundles. And the 6 bundles when he's only supposed to take 5. I loved all of that because it adds so much depth to Breaking Bad. And what we saw in Breaking Bad with that struggle between Gus and Hector and that beef and that conflict. And I love how we're getting to see that play out. And it's like, when we get to Breaking Bad, we don't know whether we like Gus or not. And then by the time it's time for Gus to go, we really don't like Gus, and we're pretty much sure he's a bad guy. And Hector isn't a bad guy at that point, because Hector's never really done anything wrong to us or any of our characters, you know? But now we're getting to see that Hector is really the worst of the two. Hector is really the bad guy. And Gus is a businessman who's in a bad business who's forced to do some bad things, I guess. I'd love to learn more about Gus's past. I don't know if we'll do that in Breaking Bad, but hey, that could always be a possibility for another spin-off. Vince Gilligan, Peter Gould, get on that. Another spin-off with, doesn't even have to be Giancarlo Esposito playing Gus. A young Gus Fring, new in America or something like that. I would love that. Or even in Mexico. Even though he's not Mexican. But I'm pretty sure he spent some time there, I think. Anyway, let's move on. Yeah, so that was pretty much it as far as Nacho's storyline goes. You get a lot of depth to the Nacho character in this episode. Where in all the other episodes, he really feels like a bad guy. But in this episode, he, you see more of the good in him. Yes, there was shades of good and all throughout his appearances in Better Call Saul. But in this episode specifically, we really get to get a sense of who he is and that he is a good guy and all of that stuff. So I really like what they're doing with that character, and I hope we get to see some more of him this season. We haven't seen much of him this year, so I really hope we get more of him. And we got Crazy 8 again, and I love that scene because Crazy 8, when he's brought to you in Breaking Bad, yes, you're told that he's a low-level guy, and he's Walt's first opponent, And yeah, he seemed like a bad guy, but you get a sense that he had a good upbringing, and he is a good guy. And now just to see him get punked like that, it's going to be fun to go back and watch him put on the tough guy act to Walt. When now, we know now that he's not really a tough guy. Amongst tough guys, he's a punk. He might be tough amongst people who aren't tough guys. But around the tough guys, Crazy 8 ain't nothing, right? He ain't shit. So I love that. And finally, I want to talk about the best scene of the episode. The Mike stuff I'm going to leave out this week because there wasn't much there other than his son lied to his wife and told his wife that Mike was his great father, and Mike was not a good father. And you can see that in his face. He doesn't want to tell her and thrash everything his son has built him up to be and tell her it was a lie. So I think next episode we're going to see him researching how to pour concrete and stuff because I don't think he knows how to do it. I don't think he ever did it. Like I said, that's all a fairy tale. But the final scene, Gus at the laundromat, which we know becomes a big, big part in his organization and a big part of Breaking Bad seasons 3 and 4. So that was really, really nice to see the laundromat. I love when they throw in anything that's Breaking Bad, whether it be characters, locations, or references. I love that, all of that stuff. So the laundromat was great. The fact that it's not set up to be his shop yet was even better. And then when he gets I was like, oh. And then once he got in the car and I saw Lydia Rodark-Quay, I was like, oh. I love it. Now, I was really hoping we would get to see how Gus got hooked up with Madrigal. That's the company Lydia works for. But I guess we won't see that. But like I said, Gus Fring prequel. We might get that. Who knows? But I liked seeing the two of them and the laundromat and all that, and it's just fleshing out the world so much. They're doing such a good job with this show in fleshing out the world. They did it really slow with seasons 1. And then season 2, it started to pick up a little, but still slow. And now season 3, it seems like they're really starting to get to that connective tissue and the world building, where season 1 and 2 was about Jimmy's world, Jimmy's characters. And now season 3 seems to be about broadening that world and that horizon and bringing us closer to Breaking Bad. So I'm really loving what they're doing with this season. I love the episode, love all the connections. My favorite, the title meaning is simple, off-brand. Like I said, it has to do with the product. Where I guess Gus looks at Hector as off-brand and Hector looks at Gus as off-brand. And now Jimmy's off-brand and everyone's off-brand. All right, so episode standout to me. This episode was Nacho. I think Nacho did a fantastic job in this episode at really giving us a push and pull, a tug of war over whether or not he's a good guy or a bad guy. Loved it. Production standout. I'm definitely gonna give it to the cinematography. The way this episode was shot was brilliant. Just like I think I gave it the cinematography last week too with that courtroom scene. If I didn't, I should have. But production it's always great with this show. Favorite thing of the episode was the ending with Lydia and the laundromat. I loved it. I liked the whole episode, but I loved that part especially. My least favorite moment of the thing was I always miss Mike whenever there's not a lot of Mike. So I miss some Mike. Even though there was a bit, still miss some Mike. And yeah, so I'm gonna give this one. This is a solid episode for me, man. This is a 4.5 out of 5. Wasn't perfect, but you know, like I say, to get a 5 out of 5, you gotta have everything. So when you're lacking one thing like action, or you're lacking drama, or you're lacking comedy, or whatever, then you know, the episode doesn't fall apart, but it loses points to me. So no action really in this episode. Some tense stuff, some you know, on the edge of the seat stuff a little bit with Nacho, but nothing mind-blowingly action-packed. So 4.5 out of 5. Like the episode. The show is solid. They just keep nailing it every episode. I know I keep promising these guys are gonna get shorter and shorter, these videos, but I just love talking about this stuff. I get going and going and going. And then when I go back to edit, there's not a lot I can cut out. I can cut out the uhs and ums, but what's the point? If I can't actually cut out anything I'm saying, why even bother with the uhs and ums? You know what I mean? Yeah, if you talk to me in real life, I say and a lot too. So that's that. Chime in down below. Let me know what you thought about the episode. Let me know what you thought about my review. What you think about my channel. What you think about me. Do you think I'm an asshole? Sometimes I do. Yep, don't forget to like, share, subscribe if you like the content, of course. And thank you so much for watching. Always appreciate it. I'm sorry it took up so much of your time once again, but thank you so much for joining me. You guys have a great day, and I will see you next time.